Awesome. All right, Heather, it should end up and say unmute. Perfect. Okay, so we are rolling with our VIP guest. Heather, oh, let me start YouTube. Good Lord. Share. Go live. Okay, so now that we have that, let me close this. And okay, so now that we are rolling with the BNC community, I would like to introduce our VIP guest for the night, and that is Heathar Shepard. I first met Heather when I was doing my quantum certification over with Quantum Biology Collective. She was educating over there, had an amazing Sunlight RX protocol that definitely aligns with what we kind of end up and do here in the BNC or the Beyond Nutrition community. And Heather, welcome to the BNC community.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be with you all tonight.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's been, oh man, since like the first cohort of QBC. So 2021, I think approximately, somewhere in there anyway, that we first, followed each other, as far as what we were doing. And so tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Wow. Well, okay. Well, first of all, I'm happy to be here. So thanks for having me. And yeah, so you all know I'm Heather, and I am many things. I'm a classical homeopath, and I do a lot with ancestral foods. And also, I have created a protocol called the Sunlight RX, that teaches people how to use sunlight therapeutically to help support their health and mitochondria and circadian biology. And it's something that I kind of pieced together when I was in a car accident maybe about 16 or so years ago. I've kind of lost track, but I had a really bad brain injury after that car accident, and had tried everything you could possibly think of to try to heal my brain. And several years in, I started experimenting with sunlight because nothing else was actually working that I was spending a whole lot of money on. And then here was this free thing in the sky, and I had really impressive results and progress just from increasing my sunlight exposure in very specific ways throughout the day and throughout certain seasons. So that is a large part of my work as well. And as Becky mentioned, I've written an ebook called the Sunlight RX that teaches people how to use sunlight therapeutically to heal not only their brain, but their mitochondria, to prevent chronic disease, to support the health of their cells and so forth. So yeah, that's
and now you've also taken on the chef role.
Yeah, kind of slid right into that because we own our own. We've just about a year ago bought a farm in New Mexico, and so we raise our own animals and food and so forth. So it has been quite the journey. We have pigs and chickens and cows soon to be on the way, and so forth. So yeah, it goes really well with that lifestyle for sure. Something I'm passionate about.
So definitely the ancestral side of things. So
Yeah.
when you were healing with your brain injury, what did that, I mean, was it just going outside? Was it what was kind of your protocol along with, what you were doing on that aspect?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because at first when I started to experiment with the sun, to say, I heard passing in a podcast somewhere to go out and watch the sunrise. And so I was like, okay, whatever. I've tried everything. Sure, why not? I'll go outside and watch the sunrise. And so I started to do that, and I felt really good. I'm like, And so I kept doing that day after day, but then I started to stay out longer in different sunlight spectrums. And I was like, I started to sleep better. My digestion started to improve. I no longer had sun-induced migraine headaches. I had more energy. My anxiety levels were down, and I was like, I mean, excuse my French, but I was like, holy shit, this is this is okay. This is interesting because I've literally was at the point where I was like, oh, I'm just gonna have to learn how to deal with these symptoms for the rest of my life. And so I started to go out for sunrise, but not only that, then I would, okay, I'm going to make breakfast and eat my breakfast outside. Okay, now I'm going to spend a little time in the afternoon UVB light outside. Okay, interesting. And the more that I did this, I noticed different shifts and changes and improvements in my health and especially my energy levels. It was really, really night and day change there, and especially my sleep. I didn't sleep well for years after my brain injury, and this was literally, if anybody has any issues with sleep, if you can watch the sunrise, you know, it can, I'm not saying it will be a miracle panacea for everyone, but it's a really great place to start retraining your circadian biology and circadian rhythms, and it's like food for your brain. And so that's kind of how the whole thing started. It was just by spending more time outside and tuning into my body and understanding what was going on. And then I was like, maybe there's some science to this. And I started to look into that more as well and began to realize that, hey, I'm making more dopamine, I'm making more serotonin, I'm recycling my melatonin stores, I'm getting like heaps of red light into my cells. And so it was really cool to align that with what I was actually experiencing. So yeah, that was how the journey started with sunlight.
And so you made a very good point in regards of being able to get the different wavelengths throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I like to speak about, getting the chronological, but is that what you were referring to essentially, as getting the sunrise, the UVA, UVB, sunset?
Yeah, let's talk about that. But that's a good question, because a lot of people have the misconception today that, they'll just go outside and they'll make vitamin D no matter when they go outside. And some people avoid going outside because they think they'll get sunburned. And all of that can be true. You very well can get sunburned when you go outside. If you go outside at the improper times of day, meaning, in order to prevent sunburn and reap the benefits of sunlight, it has to start at sunrise. And we have to then go out in this chronological order, because our biology is hardwired to these solar spectrums. And those spectrums change throughout the day. And each time they change, something different changes and happens in our biology as well. For example, at sunrise, there's a combination of red and blue light. And when our eyes are exposed to that light, it's like, boom, start releasing cortisol, completely pause melatonin release. And so this jumpstarts the whole metabolic and hormone cycle just by watching the sunrise. Excuse me. Now, as the sun continues to increase, moving closer and closer to its apex, more blue light actually is in the sky, in the sun. And the more blue light that is present, the more cortisol your body will release. And so cortisol is when we are able to be in sunlight and say sunrise, and then you go out, maybe UVA is the next spectrum, and then UVB. And if we're able to go out in each spectrum, at least for a little while, we're going to gradually build the cortisol stores in our blood, which is a good thing. We want to do it in a gradual way, versus if we have like 3 shots of espresso in the morning, we're going to flood our bloodstream with cortisol, and it's going to be like, boom, and then we get slammed, and then we hit rock bottom because we've just flooded with cortisol, and then we crash. Versus sunlight, if we go out in sunrise, UVA, UVB, we're gradually releasing our cortisol stores. This is huge for our metabolic health, our hormone health, our inflammation levels, and it prevents sunburn. So if you have the proper amount of cortisol in your bloodstream, when you get to, say, solar noon, when UVB light is really strong, and all the medical professionals are like, don't go out then, you're going to, burn, and it's cancer causing. However, there's literally been 0 studies done under actual sunlight connecting it to cancer. It's all been done under artificial light, every single study. And there's also never been a study that tapers the body in this way with the different solar spectrums from sunrise to UVA to UVB, and then back down the opposite end again, and showing any correlation to cancer. And if they do that study, they're not going to find anything except for the opposite effect. So it's really important to go in that order. So like the sunlight RX is step 1, sunrise, step 2, UVA light, step 3, UVB light, and step 4 is sunset, which I call the icing on the cake if you can watch the sunset. But exposing your skin to those solar spectrums throughout the day in chronological order will, we can get into what it does if you'd like, and break that down if you'd like. You can kind of, tell me where you want to go from here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I end up and I speak about, obviously you can see I'm sitting in the red light because eventually, well, it is already, it's dark outside.
Yeah.
Cell phones, TVs, the lighting that we end up and we are exposed to, like you said, you mentioned cortisol, that
Yeah.
all plays an intricate role, as well as, the earthing and sunrise and all of that. So yeah, that's definitely kind of where we end up, we go is on, the issues with why am I sitting, in red light after sunset?
Yeah.
Why do we not look at cell phones first thing in the morning? Because of those hormones. So
I love it. That's great. It's such a big deal, especially after sunset also. If you can get your family on board with you, or whoever you live with, if you live with other people, to make the environment red, or if you can't make it red, make it amber. And if you can't do either of those, then wear your red blue blocking glasses after sunset, if you can't get other people in your house on board. But there's a huge thing that happens with our hormones when we're able to do that, because once the sun sets, this is this biological signal to us to stop releasing cortisol, and now we're getting ready to swap over to melatonin release, right? Just the opposite that happens at sunrise. And so the longer we prolong that at night, like the longer we look at LEDs or a screen, or we just flip the switch on because we're just trained to do that. We don't think much of it, right? Because that's how we grew up. And so when we do that, and the brighter light we look at after sunset will delay the release of melatonin. And so when that release is delayed of melatonin, then we get less healing time at night, because melatonin is how we heal at night. It repairs, it regenerates, it gets rid of old cells that are damaged, right? And so by preserving our melatonin stores, by making our environment red, or at the very least amber after sunset, we support that whole process. We're able to heal, regenerate, repair at night when we sleep. Our sleep is deeper. It's there's a lot more healing that goes on when we can just by using the right light after sunset. Like, it's so easy. It's literally the easiest thing anybody can do is to make their environment red or amber or dark after sunset, and your healing will, you'll do like huge things for more than most supplements, and I think you all know what I mean. So um yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's definitely, it seems so simple, right? It's
yeah,
one of those things that just the sunlight, just the lighting of our home, it seems so simple, but
yeah,
it has the massive impact on
right,
our overall health.
yeah,
And I mean, like you said, it's not just for brain injuries. It's not just for brain health of, anxiety or depression or, those side of things, but also our metabolic health
yeah,
is very dependent, especially, the leptin signaling that happens at night.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, it's huge. And a lot of the we can do so much with light to support our health. um it's kind of like, I'm not a big stock market person, but I would assume it's like changing your light environment is probably, akin to one of the best. It's like if somebody gives you a hot tip on on some sort of stock or something to buy into, and you're like, okay, and you do it and you cash in on millions of dollars. That's literally what it's like if you, just by changing your light environment, in terms of the benefit and payoff then goes into your health and well-being. It's really a no-brainer, with so many beneficial side effects. um yeah,
Also, the other, we kind of mentioned that you were a chef and kind of doing the seasonal aspect. Before we stop streaming over on YouTube, one of the other things that I get into is seasonal eating. Why does it matter what foods we eat in what season as far as, light, as far as our body goes?
yeah, this is I think this is the area that has the biggest room for improvement with all the not that people are, not that they're bad in general, but it's just misleading for some of the fad diets and so forth. And I've tried some of them in the past, so I'm not,
Hmm.
um, I've definitely been involved in that. But when we actually boil it down, when we boil a diet down in our food choices to the bare bones, like basics, it's like we have to pay attention to what nature's doing and what she's providing in our area, because before we had any technology or grow lights or whatever it may be, we what grew outside of our door was determined by sunlight. And it wasn't until we had, grocery stores and all sorts of, just more things, more food, more availability at our fingertips, right? More food availability. Because now people have just totally lost touch with actually what's growing outside of their door in any particular season. And again, we're just trained, and I've been there to walk into a grocery store and say, I want bananas, I want oranges, I want X, Y, and Z, and just put it in our cart because, you know, that's what I want. And also we've been trained out of how to think about food and the importance of it growing outside of our door, because the sunlight that grows your food is the same sunlight you're going to be doing your sunlight RX in or getting your sunlight exposure in. And
Hmm.
so when we can marry those two things, the food that grows in our environment with the sunlight that's exposed to our body, that's a match. It's like, it's a win. And our mitochondria respond in much healthier ways. Our gut microbiome is, that's a whole other thing which we can talk about here in a minute. But your food carries a blueprint from light, because light grows the food. Light grows, right now we have butternut squash and pumpkin and these really hardy root vegetables. We don't have peaches and berries and tomatoes growing right now because it's not season. But if we were to eat those foods right now, if I were to go and be like, screw it, I want a banana, it's not growing outside, and I'm going to go to the grocery store and get it. Well, when you're outside in sunlight and it's not the same sunlight that's growing the food that you're eating, it can cause inflammation. It can cause more of a chaotic and mismatched state. And that's something we don't think about often. You know, we kind of get caught up in avoid nightshades, avoid these sort of foods, avoid histamine foods. But honestly, if we can pay more attention to the seasonability of foods, we can reduce or negate a lot of those side effects just by doing that. I'm not sure if that made sense.